Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good
Good
afternoon,
afternoon,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Yes. So I will be taking just a couple of minutes from you. I'm trying to fix the camera to my desktop. Okay. So if you can see me, that means it is successfully installed. And if you cannot see me, then we will see what we can do. I have our IT section head, Mr. Kunja Bihari Kothal. He is helping me right now. And how was your exam, boys and girls? Mid-semester examination?
Yes, ma'am, it was nice.
It was nice?
ma'am.
Good.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I'll see how you did.
Excuse me, ma'am, you are not audible to us.
I thought it was not working, but then it's working. So you can all see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll switch up my camera right now. Okay. Well, so we had almost come to the closer of the first module, verbal and non-verbal communication. And we also had discussed about the various issues in communication like registers, dialects, home language, influence and interference, and bias-free communication. And different models also we discussed discuss and process and other things. So I'll move on to module 2, which is effective communication. In this, we will do a little bit of discussion rather than I am teaching you. Let's see, because more or less whatever we discussed in the first module, those will be, somehow, in a different way it will be repeated. But then the emphasis will be not on the processes and not on the models of communication, but on how we can make it a little more effective than what we understand it to be. So in module 2, we have essentials of effective communication, communication techniques, barriers to communication, language for communication, communication in English and its importance, age of globalization and the need for communicating in English, uses of English in academic and professional situations. So, so what are the, let's talk about the first point. What are the essentials of effective communication and communication techniques? Yeah. Pratyush, tell me what is that you are speaking about?
Ma'am, actually, presentation of so many students is remaining.
How many of them are remaining?
Ma'am, from 25 onwards, ID 25 onwards, it is remaining.
Okay, okay, Pratyush. So what we'll do is on Thursday I have one lab with you.
Yes, ma'am.
That is from 3 to 5, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what we will do is that I'll take up that lab from not from 3 but a little later than 3, maybe around 3:30, and we can have some presentations, and in the next class we can have the rest of the presentations. Right? Is it okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So let's discuss a few things from module 2, and we will take it up. Definitely, we'll take it up because I have evaluated some and I have not evaluated some of you. So we will certainly, take it up. So in the last module, we have been talking about communication and how to communicate. So in here, there was also something which I said in the last class, that it is not only that communication which is it is not only communication which is happening, but we have to look forward to having effective communication. So effective means we have to ensure that actually communication is happening and it is happening effectively. So these are two things. One is of a very basic level and the other one is a little advanced level. So the basic level is that we know now what are the procedures of communication, what are the processes, and how the various models, tell us what are the processes and what are the different components of communication. Then what are the various major principles of communication, and verbal and non-verbal, like communication using language and communication using no scripted or no systematic language, but then by different physical languages like body language, then appearances, eye behavior, touch behavior, silence behavior, space behavior. um those also have different names like kinesics, like touches, haptics, and because these are different social science subjects, and in sociology, in anthropology, these things are taught, like how or what should be the physical difference between two individuals in a formal occasion, what should be the intimate physical distance between two friends. What is rather the minimum one which we should be maintaining. So keeping a distance from your communicator, or when we have an active communication, and how far or what is the distance you should be maintaining with your other communicators, that is also have to be considered, that also has to be paid attention to, and they differ in different cultures. Like if it is One culture like 6 feet is okay, another culture 3 feet is okay, another culture 1 feet is okay. It depends on the culture in which your communication context is situated. It means you can understand how a particular culture works by the way understand it through different kinds of studies and different kinds of communication principles of a particular culture. So a little bit of cross-cultural or intercultural communication awareness is non-verbal behavior or the acceptable non-verbal behavior of each country's communicators. So it's very important, and the various ways in which our physical appearance communicate with others, those are subject to interpretation and also subject to the concerned principles of a particular culture or community. Um, Say a very simple example like hugs. We do not hug in the Indian culture. Now it is coming into Indian culture, it is creeping in. But previously it was not in Indian culture that you touch somebody for greeting. But in the Western world, it has been very common that people hug each other when they meet, and it's very common. But then right now in our countries also it is becoming more or less common with men and women who are friends or who are acquaintances. But a couple of decades back this was not the case in India. This is culture specific. So in one culture it is highly acceptable, in another culture it is not. Even in Japan it is still not very common. Okay. um, so thumbs up, for example, means something in one culture and something else in another culture. So nonverbal communication can be culture specific and also can be universally true in some cases. For example, greeting, every communication, every culture understands how the other person greets. Like, for example, handshake, nodding your head, uh, keeping your eye behavior engaged with the other, then crying, laughing, smiling, looking at people. So these are, something which are very normal and usual and common in all cultures, and they mean also the same thing in other culture. Supposing you are crying, it means that here in India also we know that you are sad, and in America also they know that you are very sad, so you are crying. But then the way we cry, that differs. Like if you are an Englishman, you will not cry with a lot of noise, or you will not even make any sound while you are crying. But in India, it's very perfectly all right if you are, kind of wailing and screaming and then crying, because this is a very high context culture, and people believe in making a lot of melodramatic expressions while they are emoting. So, it can be very, very different. So while we come to talk about the effective communication, coming back to where I started, is that effective communication and generally having a communication, these are the two levels of communication. So in the first one we understood what is that, how to do that, what are the models, and here in the second module we start with what is effectiveness, how we can make our communication effective. Now I would ask you this question to all of you. Now I really do not want a very correct or accurate answer, but then I want you to participate in the discussion, like how to communicate effectively. Tell me if you have any points in your mind.
Ma'am, we can share each other's interest. Like if the speaker is only talking about his or her own interest, then it is very unlikely that the listener might also find it interesting. So sharing the listener's interest as well can
Hmm.
be very effective.
Yes, true. And yes, Swam.
Ma'am, we should be clear about the topic about which we are communicating to the other person.
Yes, we should be clear of what we are communicating. Means we should be prepared. So our preparedness is important while we are communicating. Yes, Nitin?
I'm paying attention to what someone else is speaking.
Pay attention. So your attention is required. Yes. Mine?
Ma'am, we should remain open to all possibilities so that the conversation can flow like water.
Okay. Sure. And Sangdil?
Then we should be specific. For example, there are a bunch of people sitting. I want to speak to someone. We should specify his name first before speaking.
Supposing we do not know the name, supposing you're giving a PPT and then you don't know the audience name, in that case, what will you do?
I'm saying like for example, I want to ask my friend if you will like for example, I want to borrow this much money from you. Then there are many people over there, and it won't be specific whom I'm asking. They and none of them might respond to me. So if I'll be specific, I might get a response from the person I want to.
Okay. Yes, Yogesh.
Ma'am, we should communicate in a language in which the listener understands.
Of course, we will do the code sharing. We have to use a code which other people are also aware of. I mean, they are sharing the same code, which means if I am speaking in English, my audience must know English. So, which means then again we are coming back to the principle of communication. Every communication, every planned and organized communication must be audience and purpose oriented. This is what is one of the major communication principle that we discussed, we talked in the last class. And when we talk about effective communication, so remember all your answers are pointing to some principle or the other. For example, somebody said that we have to be aware, like who are the people. So it's again coming to audience oriented. Your communication should be audience oriented in the sense, before communicating, you must pay attention to who is your audience, what is their level of IQ, level of intelligence, level of education, socioeconomic background. So knowing that, your communication has to be designed. Now, when we talk about these kind of communication, I definitely refer to organized communication, formal communication, not just intimate and high by kind of things. Then also, even if we are in a social relationship and we are talking to people to socialize, then also we have to be aware of who are they, what kind of mental and psychological problem they have. So, for example, some of your friends may not be very open about humor and criticism. So when you tease him, when you say something to create humor, he or she may not like it and feel very offended. So in that case, even if it's a friendly communication, even if it's a social communication, then also we have to pay attention that what is the mental and psychological like disposition of a person or disposition of your communicator, so that you should not offend them, because offending through any kind of communication, you lose your audience. Not only your audience, you lose everybody with whom you are communicating. So for that, for a long term relationship and to achieve the long term goals of communication, one has to be very, very respectful. And that is one of the reasons, we have been asking you to make bias free communication, neutral communication, respectful communication, politically correct communication, so that the other person or the persons are not offended, and hence the communication barrier is not created, and resultantly communication can be effective. Okay, so mostly to make communication effective, you have to follow certain set of principles which we discussed in the previous class. Okay. Yeah. Who else is raising a hand?
I was saying we have to make our communication as simple as our receiver can understand it.
Yes. It has
And I
to be.
was going to talk about like paying attention to the other person. You also said that we should be aware that before also we should prepare, and while we are talking we should accept feedback, whether they're listening, whether they're interested, and
Yes,
or
yes.
offended.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. Yes. Anything else? Yes. Come in.
We should pay attention to our own and the listeners' nonverbal cues, like our gestures,
Just a
tone,
second.
facial
Guys,
expression.
give me a moment. Just give me a moment. Okay, so yeah, so making it effective will be achieved only when communication principles are followed. Okay, so in the last classes, I have been talking about what are the principles of communication. So I want you to recapitulate that, think about it, and also if there are something additional. So please, in your khata or in your copybook, just join the major points which come to your mind, which tell us that okay, there should be this, these are the principles of communication to make it effective. So what are the principles of communication that can make it effective? Please jot it down in 5 and 6 points, just points, you don't have to discuss anything. Then we can start our discussion again. And you remember what I had taught you in the first module, what are the different principles of communication to make it effective. So quickly just jot down 5 or 6 points. Okay. See, when we talk about effective communication, it's important, to know that we can arrive at, or we can achieve good communication and effective communication only through or only by following certain principles. And which are these important principles? And these actually work for all kinds of communication: general, professional, or social. Because social communication is a little more relaxed as compared to the professional communication. So when we talk about the principles, which make your communication very, very effective or highly effective, then what is that we emphasize on? We emphasize on a more rigid principle for professional communication, and less rigid communication for principles for social communication. Okay, and together, when we take them together, then we include them into general communication. So, however, these principles are only variants of one set of the major, or the umbrella set of principles which make communication very, very effective. So that is how. So what would be your most important point, like, which you would like to share here? I'm holding a copybook and I would like to write down. So tell me. Yes.
It must be interactive, and also means it must be talk about the interest of the audience.
Yes. So once again, we go back to audience orientation, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. After Sneha, who would like to add to some important points?
The message that we give should be to the point and contain all the facts needed.
Okay. So points means more of, it's like remember, I talked about communication being very planned, not left to chance. So this is where your answer is referring to that. When we say to the point, what does it mean? To the point means that we know what we are speaking, isn't it? Or we know exactly what is that we are communicating. Means we have designed our communication to be simple, and also to be, very accurate, very tailor-made, so that we are not using additional words, extraneous points, and we are doing like very specific to the point, and what should I mean, very very shapely, communication that we are conducting. And in this process, again, we are going back to the one of the major principles that I discussed in one of the classes, that communication has to be planned and not left to chance. Yes or
Yes,
no?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So it should not be left to chance. Right. So it has to be well planned, and we are not saying that, okay, I will do it on stage, or I will do it when the time comes. Yes, Akankya?
Ma'am, it should be respectful and
Of course.
politically correct.
So we should have mostly maintaining R factor, isn't it? So what is the R factor in communication? If you have read my verbal communication notes, which I shared with you, then you must have come across somewhere I have mentioned the R factor is very important. R factor means that respectability factor, and respectability factor comes from several, several sources. So which are the sources? It should be unbiased, and it should not have any kind of offensive words or expressions. Then it should have political correctness. Again, political correctness is something which is evolving, as I said also in one of my previous classes, that political correctness which is correct today may not be correct tomorrow or after a few years. So that is an evolving process, like like the language which evolves over a period of time. This also evolves. I'll give you an example, which is, of course, in the literature field. I don't know how much you're going to gain from it, but then I thought that I'll share it with you. In the third wave feminism, feminism uh, is a branch of not exactly knowledge. It's a debate about the rights and privileges and also the attention and the importance given or equality, equality or equity given to women. That is what is called feminism. Now, in the third wave feminism, uh, the third wave feminists, they started to use language which was considered to be very, very offensive for the second wave feminists. So, in the third wave feminism, they use slangs, they use all pedestrian word, they use obscene words, and they've made it, very official and very acceptable. So, and they also claim that these are the language of the third wave feminism, because that is how we are reacting to the injustice or to the lack of privileges which we have not been given. So the same, in one generation, the same words which meant dirty things, but in the next generation, they are supposed to be, acceptable words. So, it's evolving. Language also evolves, cultures evolve, protest cultures also evolve. This is one of the examples of protest culture. So this also evolves. So political correctness being also a very fluid kind of concept, this also changes. However, in whatever condition, in whichever version the political correctness is existing, that has to be followed, and thus communication has to be respectful, unbiased, and also free from any kind of political incorrectness. This is again one of the principles. Remember, this also was discussed in the one of the previous classes. So the R factor, okay, the R factor being generated from several sources, from several again sub principles which you are following, right? Okay, then what is the next one?
There should be completeness in the communication.
There should be
Completeness.
Abhishek, your voice is breaking. Can you repeat?
Ma'am, communication should be complete in all aspects.
Complete, yeah. But how do we ensure completeness? Yes?
By providing all the necessary informations.
Yes, ma'am.
By planning the communication and not leaving it to chance.
Not leaving it to chance. Okay. Yes. Yes, Roshan, you are right. So if we plan communication beforehand and not really take a chance that, okay, because I'm a very good orator, I communicate very well, so I will be, doing fantastic job when I'm on stage. So this should not be the case, and especially in business communication, because in business communication, we communicate to perform a certain task, or we perform several tasks, okay, through communication. Now, if we give it to chance, or if we do not plan and prepare well, then we will lose. So how do we lose? We lose an audience, we lose a case, we lose market, we lose to our competitors. So there are many ways in which we lose. Okay. And I think it is Cosmos. Cosmos, you were. Will you repeat?
Ma'am, there are people who solution stress or anxiety, so we should
You want to be careful and focused about the non-verbal communication also, because non-verbal communication not only helps in communicating, but also it it adds meaning, it complements, supplements, substitute, okay, the verbal communication, and therefore we have to use non-verbal communication in appropriate quantity, appropriate manner. Okay, too much of gesticulation, too much of use of your body language, too much of loud and aggressive demonstration of your physical body while you are communicating, that is also not right. That is also not considered to be appropriate. So the appropriate amount of physical demonstration while you are communicating, like for example, using your hands and using your body in the sense whether you are inclined or reclined, or your body shows that you are enthusiastic in the communication, eye behavior, eye engagement with your communicators. So these must be used appropriately and adequately and in the most civil manner. Okay. Yes. Yes, Riddhi. I do agree with you. As one of the major principles of communication is that verbal and non-verbal communication must be appropriately combined and used whenever it is necessary. Now, here I have a question to all of you. Just think for 2 minutes or 3 minutes that how non-verbal communication is used in writing communication or written communication. Just think for a while. I'll give you 2 minutes to think about it.
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry?
Can you repeat the question?
Question is that while we are writing, how in written communication non-verbal cues are used. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Jaideep, you think about it. All of you think about it, then I'll come back to you. Just will give me 1 moment. Yes, Sneha. Yeah, Sneha, tell me. Hello? Sneha, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, there was
Tell
some
me.
disturbance growing on. That's why I received. Ma'am, in written communication, ma'am, one thing can be like those posters, very catchy posters, through visual communication, and another thing like when we see very means slogans or something very witty slogans like that. That can also be using
Mm-hmm.
like the tone of the slogans. Like in sometimes in that traffic signals we see na life is precious. Means, like I want to say that sometimes like giving a direct message, like we are want to say that please drive safely. People might not give attention to it, but sometimes we see very witty slogans like get to home in peace, not in pieces. In that way also, like the
Okay.
tone of speaking,
Okay.
that can be very effective.
Okay. Yes. Any other example?
Ma'am, in a formal letter, there is an appropriate format and an appropriate length which we should write so that
Huh?
it doesn't appear that we are just not interested in the format. Like if you're requesting help, we can't just write in 2 lines that this is the problem and we need help. We are supposed to request it politely.
Mm-hmm.
So an appropriate amount of length and content.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's part of nonverbal communication?
Yes, ma'am. Some when we look at it and we see that some they have written half a page or some thing, then they feel that okay, that person is interested in speaking to us. It might be an important matter or otherwise.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Well, certainly, like, yeah, Jaideep, you wanted to say something?
Ma'am, the usage of the simple symbol like the exclamation mark,
Mm-hmm.
like to emphasize something. Those which in a face-to-face communication we can emphasize the things by our gesture, but in a written communication we can make the use of these certain symbols like exclamation or in a strong
Okay.
opinion, emotional surprise.
Yes, Abhishek?
Ma'am, in WhatsApp we usually share emojis to express our verbal communication in non-verbal way.
Okay. Any other point? Yes.
Also very catchy posters or symbols like we see on roads, or sometimes very good advertisements also, that can be a part
Ma'am,
of it.
even color.
Okay, yes. These are fine, these are examples, but then supposing, yes, Roshan.
Ma'am, like in the physically written medium, like in the answer paper of our question exams or in the
Mm-hmm.
letters,
Mm-hmm.
if we cross out a lot of things or overwrite many things, it can show that we lack the confidence in ourselves or what we are writing. We are not clear on the concepts that we are trying to put into words. We do not believe in it or something like that.
Yes, yes. Okay. Any other example? One more example. Actually, these examples are fine, but they are not in the mainstream nonverbal representation. Remember when we are writing something like, say, we underline, okay, we highlight, that is one. Then we use, illustrations, charts, pies, graphs, pictorials, visuals. So these are all part of the written nonverbal communication, which we use, to substantiate, to add value, to complement, to make our written communication more effective. Okay, again, we are coming back to the question of effectiveness. How, supposing I am writing a survey paper, and in which I have done some survey. So the data processing or the data analysis, the data which I have collected, the data analysis and representation through the graphs and pies and charts, that is very helpful, and the paper without them will be definitely less helpful, but if you provide this, it will be more helpful. So here, the nonverbal communication for writing is substantiating the point which you are trying to make, and also they are they are, you know, fortifying, they are supplementing, they are complementing the verbal messages which you are sending in the form of a letter or a report or a survey paper or a research paper or a, you know, whatever it is. Like for example, when we write research papers also, we use a lot of you know, representation of information through different things like columns, bars, graphs, charts, illustrations. So these are also part of the non-verbal communication used in written communication. And there you can also say that the different kinds of visuals, the different kinds of auditory material which we use or attach to our written communication, that is also possible. But there is one important point here which I want all of you to understand and also to ponder on, to think about it. Very often you will see that we do not use either oral or written in an isolated manner. So oral communication happens along with written communication. Written communication also is done or it is conducted in addition to oral communication. Say for example, you are making a PowerPoint presentation to the class, which you did, or many of you did. So we have oral communication because you are speaking, and all the oral communication principles are followed by you or followed by me when we are doing the presentation. Now, you also are using visuals. You are also using verbal communication. When you are using your slides, and on the slide you have textual material. So your slides, your text, your voice, your visuals, sometimes your videos and audios if you are attaching one. So they, as a complete, you know, as an all-round, as a complete package, it is being communicated to your audience. So this is more effective than either speaking the whole thing without the help of all of these audio and visuals, or writing this whole thing, you know, without the without the others' help or others' assistance. So communication is becoming more and more, you know, more and more. What should I say? It happens in multi-dimensional or multimodal activities. Okay, multimodal in the sense it is verbal, it is non-verbal, it is visual, it is auditory. So together we are communicating, and that communication is most effective than the one-dimensional communication or one-directional communication. Now in the offices also you will find more and more activities are multimodal. Say for example, I was watching a couple of videos from Columbia University and Stanford University in the United States, and I was watching the discussion of also another video I was watching, the discussion between two very important and leading writers of the 21st century. One is the American, Greek American novelist. His name is called Jeffrey Eugenides, and the very modern, you know, English writer called Zadie Smith. Both of them were in conversation, and both of them were leading novelists of the time. Jeffrey Eugenides already, I think, is a Pulitzer winner. Same with Zadie Smith. Zadie Smith's only book, which is called White Teeth, that also has received Pulitzer, and they were having a discussion. So in the discussion, you know, there was talk, there was display of information, there was reference to texts, you know, different older texts, and she was talking about a text from 14th century English poetry. So together, how many modes they are using for communication? So there are different modes of communication, and all these are happening at the same time, so it is becoming multimodal. And that is one thing I want you to remember, that when we are evolving, our communication theory also is evolving. So the principles which we thought it is only appropriate or valid for effective communication, now the list is longer. I mean, I'm not saying that what was valid 10 years back is no more valid now. I'm not saying that. But we have additional features which is being added up to the communication principles. It is because, we know that we are growing with the technology, we are growing with the application of technology. So that is how it is important to understand this particular point. So make and in terms of making communication more and more effective. Okay. So any other principle that you would like to talk about? Yes.
Actually, ma'am, communication should be planned, ma'am. At the same time, we should means the communicator must have his presence of mind. Like sometimes counter questions can be asked, or he might be means sometimes he have to give very witty answer or very means what I say diplomatic answers. So in that case, ma'am, the presence of mind of the speaker also matters, because we cannot means predetermine what is coming next, or we cannot means predict the future. In that case, ma'am, despite of having a proper plan, we must keep a plan B ready, or have our presence of mind, or have our mind open.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So technology, modern tools and digital tools, digital devices, they have become the part of communication. So one should also know how effectively and how ethically to use these tools. Okay. Most important is how ethical and how aesthetically it has to be used. So you must use a computer, but you must know how to use a computer in a proper way if you are in an office environment. Now look at emails. Supposing you do not know what are email ethics or email etiquettes in the office, so you land up in trouble. For example, forwarding bad material, forwarding gender-specific material, forwarding indiscriminately emails, writing emails which are long and unreadable. So there are many such etiquettes about email which one has to follow if one has to successfully communicate in the office environment. So technology and its allied problems or issues must be considered, for good and effective communication. Any other point which you want to make? Yes.
Ma'am, to execute all these principles which we discussed.
Yes, execute them effectively. Sure. Unless you execute them and you just know about them, there is no point. So apply them and very realistically. Okay. Yes, Rishikesh, you wanted to say something?
No, ma'am, the same thing. Same thing.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Right. Yes.
In unplanned situations where
Yes.
our boss or superior, they suggest or ask our opinions about a topic. So in group discussions, unexpected group discussions, how are we supposed to behave?
Will you repeat the last part of your?
How are we supposed to communicate effectively?
How we are supposed to?
Communicate effectively when our superior starts unexpected group discussion, new idea comes.
Will you please write notes? Anna, let me talk to that.
Because people are even insisting classes in hybrid mode, but because many parents are not are reluctant to send their words here, and also because at the end of the day, the pandemic is going on, so people might suffer from.
I'll talk to the dean academics. Okay, I'll let you know. Yeah. Akanksha, I want you to type it out. Not able to hear you. Superior suggest a new idea. How are we supposed to communicate effectively?
Ma'am,
New
in
idea.
unplanned situation.
New idea means, yeah. I mean, unplanned situation. Yes. Here, there's something important I want to advise you. Though we have to be planned and coordinate well before a communication, then it's always not possible, like as you say, in an unplanned way. There are many situations in life which we do not foresee, which comes to us as an emergency, as something quick, and we have to finish it suddenly. So in those cases, then what do we do? So I would say one should practice communication continuously, continuous process. Communication is a continuous process, so we should be equipped with the right kind of knowledge, the right kind of understanding about communication. So once we become good communicators, we are less likely to make mistakes or commit actually ordinary and silly mistakes. That is one. And second is that if you are well read, you have idea about many things, and especially in your field which you are doing and the allied area, then even if the communication is sudden and you are asked to communicate in a very short span of time, does not matter, because if you are used, if you are skilled, and if you have enough of experience, then you will not do many mistakes while you are communicating. So it all about how you are practicing, how you are reading, how critically you are asking questions that make you a good communicator or a bad communicator. Because in life situations, every communication situation cannot be planned. I know that. And more or less in the office, you also have to talk to people. In the office, you have to attend a suddenly announced meeting. So it's not possible all the while that we are always well prepared. But then practice makes somebody very close to perfect, if not perfect, and makes closer to perfect. So that's possible, right?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, also, how do we practice for speaking to an audience or to respond to biased comments?
How to practice?
Yes, ma'am. For an audience, sometimes we have stage fear, which, so what are we supposed to do with that? Suddenly we.
So in that case, you have to have the practice, and that practice and then experience will help you. And stage fear, everybody has. Okay, everybody has stage fear. Nobody is free from it, and I'm sure when the PM Modi also goes to speak somewhere, he also would be nervous a little, because this is a very normal, this is a very common phenomenon, nothing new. But then if you are experienced one and you have been communicating, you will do a good job, nothing to fear. And not that everybody will be a wonderful speaker, not like that. You should be functionally communicating, ethically communicating, appropriately communicating, and you should be able to send your message across to your audience or to your receiver or to the other communicator. So that is more important. It's not very important that you speak endlessly in a very flowing or lucid manner. Not necessary. Those are for public speakers. Those are for spiritual leaders who want to actually, put people under a lot of illusion. So we don't want that, right? So we want only, you should be able to send your message across very nicely, transmitted without any kind of filter and filter and barrier. And your audience, your reader, your listener must be able to hear and understand you, construct meaning. What is the intended meaning? Okay, so this should be enough for effective communication. But then this also requires a lot of effort and practice. Okay, any other question? Okay. Now, if you do not have any other question, let me take your attendance. Give me a moment. When I call out your roll number, quickly reply. Abhishek Gupta.
Present, sir. Present,
Abhishek,
ma'am.
Abhishek
Present, ma'am.
Upadhyay.
Present, ma'am.
Adira Sahu. Adira Sahu. Aditya Vikram Jena.
Present, ma'am.
Akankhya Nayak.
Present, ma'am.
Aman Gupta.
Present, ma'am.
Anshuman Padhi, anyway left. Arnab Mahanti.
Present, ma'am.
Astha Swarup Nayak.
Present, ma'am.
Gemini Lakra.
Present, ma'am.
Ayush Singh.
Present, ma'am.
V. Karthik.
Present, ma'am.
Bhavani Shankar Murmu.
Present, ma'am.
Sai Rohan Reddy.
Present, ma'am.
Bayapati Sutej.
Present, ma'am.
Tarun Kumar.
Present, ma'am.
Cosmos Tirki.
Present, ma'am.
Rishikesh Ramesh.
Present, ma'am.
Harsh Mishra.
Present, ma'am.
Harsh Yogesh.
Present, ma'am.
Jami.
Present, ma'am.
Jyotideep Achari.
Present, ma'am.
Karimi Upendra.
Present, ma'am.
Raja Naik. Raja Naik. Kirti Padhi.
Present, ma'am.
Ma'am, 25. 24, ma'am. Rajanayak.
Okay. Pratyush Ajay. Mayan Pradhan.
Present, ma'am.
Minakshi Sahu.
Present, ma'am.
Monalisa Panda. Monalisa Panda. Mridul Tripathi.
Present, ma'am.
Naisargika Subudhi.
Present, ma'am.
Nitin Sinha. Vashisht Reddy.
Present, ma'am.
Navya Pritam Reddy.
Present, ma'am.
Pawan Kumar.
Present, ma'am.
Pravanjan Mishra.
Present, ma'am.
Pratik Tripathi.
Present, ma'am.
Priyadarshan Dehuri.
Present, ma'am.
Prayash Chandra Ta.
Present, ma'am.
Priyambada Onkar.
Present, ma'am.
Ravi Kumar.
Present, ma'am.
Ravi Shovesh.
Present, ma'am.
Riddhi Agarwal.
Present, ma'am.
Rituparna Sanapati.
Present, ma'am.
Rohan Kumar Mohanty.
Present, ma'am.
Roshan Das.
Present, ma'am.
Rudradev Pradhan.
Present, ma'am.
Rudranath Agarwal. Rudransh Agarwal. Sorry.
Present, ma'am.
Samir Ranjan Sahu. Sangdil Biswal.
Present, ma'am.
Sanjeev Sethi.
Present, ma'am.
Saroj Majhi.
Present, ma'am.
Satvik Parida.
Present, ma'am.
Shivakshi Singh.
Present, ma'am.
Shobhan Parida.
Present, ma'am.
Shruti Swarupa Dhar.
Present, ma'am.
Sneha Mandal.
Present, ma'am.
Somesh Mahanti.
Present, ma'am.
Sudhanshu Kumar.
Present, ma'am.
Suman Priti Gilwa.
Present, ma'am.
Sudhanshu Kumar, you were not present in the last class?
Last class.
Uh,
It might be, ma'am.
my God. So, yeah, Aman Sharma,
Present, ma'am.
Anuj Baloria. Anuj Baloria. Rudraksh Gupta.
Present, ma'am.
Sunil Sajad Reshi.
Present, ma'am.
Sahil.
Yes, ma'am. Present.
Okay, Swayam
Present,
Siddharth
ma'am.
Naik. Tanmay Barman.
Present, ma'am.
Tuta Janvi.
Present, ma'am.
Ujjwal Kumar,
Present, ma'am.
Vivek Mishra,
Present, ma'am.
Yogesh Mundra.
Present, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, boys and girls, thank you
Ma'am,
for, yes,
ma'am, I got disconnected, ma'am. ID 29.
29.
Ma'am, 27 is present.
Ma'am, actually, was my voice audible because I am facing network issues? Sneha, ID 57.
Yes, yes, I heard you, Sneha. Who
Okay.
else? Who else?
Ma'am,
Some
29.
people have
29, I got it. Then
Ma'am, some people have typed it out in the chat section. They are also present. Ma'am, ID 32, 26.
mine for the yeah, I got it. Nitin Sinha, I
Ma'am,
got
Pratyush
you.
Kurhe is also present, ma'am.
Yes,
He is
yes, I
facing
got
some
them.
mic issues.
Okay. Actually, one person, Anuj Baloria, is he around? I don't think Anuj is here. I marked him absent. And one more person here. I think Adira Sahu is absent. Rest everybody is present. Because simultaneously I'm looking at the list of students present. Okay. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. And we will be there tomorrow. Sorry, on Thursday, a little later than 3 o'clock. Okay. And I'll see you. Take care.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.